President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Good evening, and welcome to Today in History. I'm Matt Datillo. Today is February 26th, 2010, and this is episode 421. Well, if you haven't listened to episode 419, please skip back 2 episodes, take a moment and listen. That will explain the 500 for 5 campaign I currently have going on, which is the reason that you're getting all of a sudden an episode every day. So please take a moment, listen to that, and I hope you can play even a small part if you choose to. Let's get on to the history. Tonight, we're going to talk about another figure in U.S. naval history. Don't worry, this podcast is in no danger of becoming a history of the United States Navy. However, I think it's important to not only recognize those who contributed greatly to the defining moments of our past, but spotlight those who, for one reason or another, have been treated poorly by history. While we will never be able to discuss all these individuals, tonight's topic is one that is important to me for personal reasons, and is, in my opinion, well overdue for our common reconsideration. Today in 1882, future U.S. Navy Admiral Husband Edward Kimmel was born in Henderson, Kentucky. Kimmel gained notoriety for his role as the commander of the Pacific Fleet at the time of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Today, the Kimmel family continues to fight for an accurate public accounting of his actions before and during that fatal day. Husband Kimmel graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1904 and began a career that would span more than 4 decades. He served aboard several battleships, including service in the Atlantic during the First World War. He later commanded 2 destroyer divisions and the battleship USS New York. He had the honor of serving as an aide to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 1915. That Assistant Secretary's name was Franklin Roosevelt. Kimmel was promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral in 1937, and 4 years later, in February 1941, he was given command of the Pacific Fleet. He gained a temporary promotion to the 4 stars of a full admiral as the position demanded. He relieved Admiral James Richardson, whom President Roosevelt had fired due to the admiral's opposition to moving the Pacific Fleet from California to Hawaii in the summer of 1940. Richardson believed that this move placed the fleet at undue risk. Pearl Harbor, he argued, did not have the facilities to fully support such an influx of ships. Furthermore, Richardson believed that Pearl Harbor could not be adequately defended against an air attack. His willingness to state his opinion as an experienced naval officer cost him his career. Admiral Kimmel understood the deficiencies of Pearl Harbor itself and the poor condition of the local defense. The War Department allocated 180 B-17 Flying Fortresses to the Hawaiian Department for long-range reconnaissance and anti-shipping functions, but they were slow in coming. By December 1941, only 12 had arrived. 2 weeks before the attack, the Chief of Naval Operations informed the Navy Command in Hawaii that there were no additional planes available. Admiral Kimmel and his Army counterpart, Lieutenant General Walter Short, knew that an air attack on Pearl Harbor would be devastating, but their areas of responsibility were obviously not high on the priority list at the War Department. On November 27, 1941, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Ernest King, sent Kimmel and other commanders in the Pacific the now famous war warning message, in which he stated that negotiations with Japan were breaking down and that an offensive push by the Japanese military was expected within the next few days. This message is often cited as proof that Kimmel knew of an impending attack, but did little to prepare for it. However, a closer look at the wording of the message shows that no one in the Navy Department expected an attack on Pearl Harbor. Instead, The Japanese were expected to move against the Philippines, which they did, or other targets in the Southwest Pacific. Admiral Kimmel assumed, as any commander would, that any intelligence information related to his command would be forwarded to him as soon as it was made available. This was not the case. While the U.S. Navy had been reading most of the Japanese radio intercepts for months before Pearl Harbor, several vital messages were withheld from Kimmel for reasons which are still unknown. He was not told, for example, that in September 1941, Tokyo had ordered its consul general in Honolulu to make a detailed report of the ships present in Pearl Harbor, as well as their movements. After November 15th, he was ordered to make such a report twice a week. This would have told Kimmel exactly what he needed to know, that the Japanese were certainly planning to hit Pearl Harbor. Information of this type would have allowed the Admiral to order the entire Pacific Fleet to sea, from where it could have better defended against an air attack. As it was, the only capital ships at sea on the morning of December 7th were the fleet's aircraft carriers. The attack on Pearl Harbor was an unmitigated success for the Japanese Imperial Navy. The Pacific Fleet lost 4 battleships, 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and 2 auxiliary ships, along with nearly 200 aircraft. Over 2,400 Americans, both military and civilian, lost their lives. Admiral Kimmel was relieved of his command 10 days after the attack. He reverted back to his permanent rank of Rear Admiral. Contrary to popular myth, he was not demoted as a punishment, and was allowed to retire. His son, Manning, died during the war when the submarine he commanded struck a Japanese mine. Kimmel spent the rest of his life defending his actions during the months leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Navy eventually pinned him with most of the blame for the outcome of the attack, a sting from which he never recovered. Edwin Layton, Kimmel's chief intelligence officer, later related in his book about that attack, quote, "Kimmel stood by the windows of his office at the submarine base, his jaw set in stony anguish. As he watched the disaster across the harbor unfold with terrible fury, a spent .50 caliber machine gun bullet crashed through the glass. It brushed the Admiral before it clanged to the floor. It cut his white jacket and raised a welt on his chest. It would have been merciful had it killed me," Kimmel murmured to his communications officer. Tomorrow night, we're going to delve a little more into Kimmel's actions before December 7th, 1941, and the information that Washington did and did not share with the 2 commanders in Hawaii. We're also going to look at the involvement of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover in the post-attack investigation, and see how the Kimmel family is continuing to fight to clear the late Admiral's name. Well, that's it for the history this evening. If you'd like to get in touch with me, as always, please drop me an email at mattstodayinhistory@gmail.com. You also find me on Facebook. Just do a search for Matt Dattilo. That's MattDattilo. If you're interested in ordering a DVD of all past episodes of the show or making a donation, please visit mattstodayinhistory.com and click on the donation link on the left side of the page. The donations I ask for a DVD are $20 in the lower 48 states, $25 everywhere else on the planet. If you do decide to order a DVD instead of just making a small donation, please note that in the comments section. You do not have to have a PayPal account to order a DVD. If you have any questions about the ordering, please drop me a line and I'll be glad to help you in any way I can. Well, that's it for this evening. Thank you very much for staying subscribed, and have a good night. We'll talk again tomorrow.